Diana Wentworth, and I'm so excited to be with you. I'm the co-founder of the Inside Edge Foundation for Education. It's been a forum for thought leaders and all kinds of people who are activists in the world where they meet and greet and expand who they are. And we've been recording 1,500 of our past speakers. And we're going to take the very best of these and offer them on our YouTube channel. We're starting to post them weekly. So what you want to do is go to our YouTube channel and to subscribe to it, and you'll get all kinds of information about what we're offering. It's so thrilling to be offering this legacy to you now. It feels really good.
Have Ellen Grace O'Brien. She's going to be talking to us about life in dynamic balance. How to prosper without losing your soul. Please welcome Ellen Grace O'Brien.
I'm delighted to be here at the Inside Edge, and what a warm and welcoming group you are. And several of you have told me about a little bit about your own spiritual journey, and some of you, your connection to yoga, and having been to the Self-Realization Fellowship here in your own backyard. And my teacher, my spiritual teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, was a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And that's how I came into this path. And just being here with you at this really, really early hour, it made me think about, my teacher said that when Paramahansa Yogananda would hold his worship services, he would had a little back and forth with the group, which he would say, how feels everyone, or how is everyone? And they would say, awake and ready. And so I think that is true of this group. So I'm going to try it out. How is everyone this morning?
Awake and ready.
I suspected that about you. So I'm going to be sharing with you this morning about the Jewel of Abundance, which is, of course, the title of my newly released book. The subtitle is Finding Prosperity Through the Ancient Wisdom of Yoga. So it's interesting to think about yoga in America and how that is unfolding today. I mean, years ago, when I came onto the path of yoga, it was really not well known. And today, there are yoga studios next to every Starbucks in every community, usually more than one. And I thought it was so interesting yesterday. And sometimes, don't you see things and then you wonder, did I really see that? So we were boarding the plane yesterday on Alaska Airlines to get here from San Jose. And as we were walking on the little entry thing, that little tube that you walk down to get onto the plane, there was like a little billboard, and it said, please refrain from practicing warrior pose in the aisles. Because it may scare the other passengers. She's going to be my witness. Did we really see that?
We stopped.
And so I thought, this is so interesting. This is because how many people would recognize that? Mostly everyone, that they would put up that poster. And so, in America today, we've become very familiar with yoga as an exercise program, and many people know what warrior pose is now. And people are, of course, familiar with yoga as a practice, as a philosophy for spiritual enlightenment. But not so many people are familiar with yoga as a whole package. And by that, I mean a path of spiritually enlightened living. So how to be happy, healthy, prosperous, and spiritually awake, and make a contribution while you're here on earth. And that's really what yoga is about, is this living a fulfilled life. how to live an awakened, happy, healthy, prosperous life. Now, one of the stories I like to tell, there's a couple I'll tell you this morning from the Sufi tradition about this wise fool named Mullah Nasruddin. Maybe some of you have heard stories of Mullah, but the first one I want to tell you this morning is that Mullah is riding a horse, and he is just careening through the main street in town at top speed, and his friend is standing on the side of the road, and he yells out to him, "Mullah, where are you going?" And Mullah yells back, "I don't know, ask the horse." So very often it's like that for us in life. You know, we're going at top speed, but we haven't yet answered the question, you know, where are we really going? What are we really doing with our lives? And when I wrote this book on the Jewel of Abundance, Finding Prosperity Through the Ancient Wisdom of Yoga, my publisher said to me, okay, you need to have an elevator talk. You know, you need to have your elevator speech. And those of you, there are many authors here, and those of you who are authors know exactly what that means. You're supposed to, you know, be able to describe your book in between floors before somebody gets out, right? And so I said, well, this book is about how to thrive and prosper without losing your soul along the way. And I have tried it out in some elevators, and I found out that there is a universal interest in that topic. How to thrive and prosper in life, how to be materially prosperous, to be wealthy, to be engaged in work that you love, and not lose your spiritual focus, not lose your soul along the way. So people usually say to me, I want to know that. And that's because, you know, for me, that's what I needed to learn as well. So of course, I want to say, you can't lose the soul. None of us can lose the soul, right? Because we are the soul. However, we can lose contact with the soul. And that's what happened to me. And when it happened to me, of course, I thought it was really unique. I thought I was really unique, but I later discovered, no, that's a universal story. And the way I experienced it was as a young woman, as a young adult, I had followed that trajectory that many of us do, which is the search for happiness, right? So you are to go to school, you go to college, you know, your happiness is going to come through accomplishment, through education, through your work, through your relationships, through your family, through your home in the country, you know, X. And I got to the place in my life where I had checked all of the boxes, which was work that I loved, the home in the country, marriage, children, career that was satisfying, but something was missing. And I felt that profound sense of something being missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda said, everybody is looking for something else. And he capitalized that something else, the S and the E. And he said that something else is God. And, you know, use whatever name you will for that. But that something else, of course, for me was my own self. My own soul had been left out of my life. It wasn't that I didn't have a spiritual inclination. It was that I didn't know how to connect to myself. I had lost touch with myself. And so I felt that longing for a life of fullness and meaning that all of those external things could not give me. And of course, that sent me off on the trajectory of finding my spiritual path. Now, I said this was an ancient story, and so I want to tell you another Mullah story about it, because it's one that sort of captures it. So this is one that you may have heard before, very familiar story. This is a story about Mullah. One night, he's outside in the dark and under a street lamp, and he's down on the ground, digging around on the ground. And he'll kind of look up, look around, and he's digging around on the ground. And his friend comes up, and he says to him, Mullah, what are you doing? And Mullah says, well, I lost my keys. I'm looking for my keys. So his friend says, well, where did you last see them? Now, I always say, don't you love that question? Because if you have ever misplaced your keys, and I'm guessing you have, or some other thing, you always have that friend that comes to you and says, well, where did you last have them? And of course, if we knew where we last had them, we wouldn't be looking for them. So the friend comes along and says, well, Mullah, where did you last see them? And Mullah says, in my house. And his friend says, well, if you last saw them in your house, why are you outside here looking under the street lamp? And Mullah says, because the light is better out here. And so, of course, that story always gets a little chuckle, and for me, no matter how many times I hear it. But of course, it's a spiritual story, and it's a story about us, and it's a story about knowing where to look and how to look. So the keys being in our own house are about the keys being in our own consciousness. The key being within us, which is what all the religious and spiritual traditions tell us. That kingdom is within you. But most of us don't know how to look. We don't know how to look there. So, Mullah says he's looking outside because the light is better out there. So I think that points to this kind of universal human journey where we look outside of ourselves, for our fulfillment, for our wealth, for our prosperity, for our happiness, because we're conditioned to look out there. We think the light is better out there in that way. And we don't necessarily know how to look within. And that was true for me. That's why I felt like I was somehow living at a distance from my own self, even though I had those external things that should have brought me happiness, and they did. It's just that something was missing. And what was missing was knowing how to look within my own house. And so when I found the path of Kriya Yoga, which is the particular philosophy of yoga that I studied, of course I learned how to meditate. And that was the first step, is learning how to turn attention within, learning how to experience my own wholeness, my own fullness. And then I learned about this philosophy that yoga has about how to have a spiritually fulfilling, prosperous life. And not only how to do it, but how important it is that we do it. Because we are all here with divine potential. We're all here with gifts to give to life. I mean, we look around the room and how much beauty do you see here? How much uniqueness do you see? Each one has that unique beauty, that unique gift to give to the world. And that's why we're here. So it turns out that yoga has a very beautiful philosophy for us to look at for how to be in the world, to wake up spiritually, and then to learn how to thrive and to prosper. And I call this in my book the Prosperity Imperative. And by that imperative, I mean that there is a call within us that is the call of life itself, that's a divine calling, if you will, for us to thrive and to prosper and to be what I call the growing edge of love in our world, to be the growing edge of love, to bring forth the gifts that we are here to bring forth. So then the question comes, well, how do we do that? is there a formula for that? And it turns out that, yes, there is. So I'm going to just read a little bit to you here, and we'll take it from there. The inclination to thrive, prosper, and fulfill our potential is the natural impulse of our divine capacity as spiritual beings. The same energy that gives birth to stars in the cosmos inspires music, literature, architecture, medicine, dance, technology, any and all forms of creative expression and manifestation. That energy is unlimited. It pervades all of nature, relentlessly encouraging all of life to realize its full potential. Thrive, thrive, it implores. It whispers in our dreams and stirs our imagination with its evolutionary call. Prosper, live your full life. Do what you came here to do. Follow the impulse to prosper and become all that you truly are in your fullness. Do you remember as a child being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I think we're still asking kids that question today, because we have this understanding that there is this potential unfolding. And I remember, dreaming of what I might be when I grew up, but I didn't really have a template for that, other than cultural expectations of what was possible for me. So over the years, I've heard many spiritual seekers share a similar story, and they often say something like, wouldn't it be great if life came with an instruction manual? And so I want to say that I think that seemingly missing instruction manual can be seen as the 4 universal goals in life that we find in the ancient Vedic teachings. And these goals are called the Purusharthas. And the very word itself means for the sake of the soul. For the sake of the soul. So, in a sense, this is a very simple but profound formula for how to prosper, thrive, be successful, spiritually fulfilled, how to do that without losing your soul along the way. So I want to tell you about those 4 goals. And these are ancient, thousands of years old, that come from the Vedas, but they couldn't be more relevant to our life today. So the first goal, I'm going to give you the Sanskrit words because some of them are familiar, some of them are in our English lexicon today, but they also have more meaning than what I can translate. So the first goal is Darma. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with that word today. It's entered into our language much like yoga has. But Dharma we can translate as to live with higher purpose. Not just to live with purpose, but to live with higher purpose. Meaning that there is a divine purpose for life that is unfolding, and each one of us has a part to play in that. So Dharma refers to cosmic order, to the support of life itself. It means duty, it means support, it means authentic expression. So we could say that the Dharma of a door is to open and close. The Dharma of the ocean is to break out in waves. So a Dharma is a thing being what it is. So when we talk about living with higher purpose as the first goal, we're talking about learning how to cooperate with the infinite, learning how to be our authentic self in expression. And the key there is, again, higher purpose. So it's not just to live with a purpose, it's to live with higher purpose and learn how to cooperate with the infinite. Now, the second universal goal that comes with this model is called artha, which is the subject of my book, or it is defined as wealth. So I found that surprising and refreshing, that here in an ancient spiritual model, which we would have first live with higher purpose, understand your responsibility to thrive and to contribute to the well-being of all. Second goal would be wealth. And you think, well, how does that work? What does that mean? And in this system, wealth is understood as the support for Dharma. In other words, we are here to learn how to thrive, to learn how to prosper, so that we can fulfill that divine purpose that we're here to express. So those two go together, higher purpose and prosperity. And that is one of the reasons I wrote this book, because they often are not in the right relationship with one another. So sometimes we find people who know a lot about wealth and prosperity, but they don't understand about higher purpose. And they don't understand the order of things, given that wealth comes second in the order. In other words, wealth is understood to support this divine purpose in our lives. So it doesn't come first, it comes second to support Dharma. And then we have some people who are spiritually inspired to do good work in the world, but they don't know how to prosper. They don't know how to bring forth what the universe will provide to allow them to express that higher purpose. So understanding the tools for how we bring forth wealth in a dharmic way, in accordance with higher purpose, is really critical. And so if I had the rest of the day with you, I could explain about what the spiritual principles are according to yoga for how to bring forth wealth. And maybe we'll get that in the Q&A a little bit. But I want to get to the other goals. So the third goal could be equally as surprising. It's certainly equally as delightful. And the third goal is kama, or pleasure. Are you liking this system? So live with higher purpose, prosper, and be sure you enjoy your life along the way. And I'm sure many of you have heard the biblical phrase, what does it profit a person if they gain the whole world but lose their soul along the way, right? So we find also in this ancient Vedic system that it is critical for us to enjoy our life. And I'm sure you have seen people, or it may have even happened to you, that become so involved in trying to do the work that they're here to do that they forget all about enjoying life, right? So this is a critical, there's only 4 goals. So for the third one to be, hey, remember to enjoy your life, is really critical. And then the fourth goal is called moksha, or enlightenment, liberation of consciousness. So we are here to wake up completely, to be spiritually enlightened in this lifetime. So it's taught in the yoga system that the greatest goal, the greatest detriment, that we have to spiritual liberation, to enlightenment, if you will, is our belief that it's not for us. In other words, we think of enlightenment as a lofty goal that only a few special souls throughout history attain. But if you read the teachings, every single enlightened teacher will say that same potential is within you. That same potential indwells each and every one of us. So this fourth goal says, don't put that off. Don't think it's about somebody else. It's for you. It's for you to realize liberation in this lifetime and to wake up completely. So those are the 4 goals: to live with higher purpose, to learn how to prosper, learn how to cooperate with the infinite so that you can make the contribution that you're here to contribute. And remember to enjoy your life along the way. And while you're at it, wake up fully, experience freedom in this lifetime. So higher purpose, prosperity, pleasure, enjoy your life, and liberation, freedom. So one of the things I want to share too is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that this process of thriving and prospering, living in accordance with these 4 goals. And remember, the Purusharthas mean for the sake of the soul. So you're here to fulfill your divine potential, but not just for yourself, because we are all connected in this world. I think we know that, right? So nobody prospers in isolation. So we're here to offer what we have to offer for the well-being of all of the world. And it's critical that we do that. That's why I called it the Prosperity Imperative. And it's especially important in our time, isn't it? That we learn how to contribute what we're here to contribute for the well-being of all. And that's really about changing our consciousness from a materialistic consciousness to a spiritual consciousness, and learning how those two, so-called two, live together. And what I mean by so-called two is that yoga says this world is an expression of consciousness, and there is no real separation between the material world and the spiritual world. It's all spiritual. It's all one life, one reality in expression. So I want to share with you about this prosperity imperative and why it's so important in our time. Let me just find that passage to share with you. And then we can have some questions and answers. And we live in an awakening world, in a time of individual and global awakening to the great truth that life is one. That's a capital O. Life is one. And that one life is God, whatever name you want to call it: spirit, life, presence, God. As life is God in expression, it is whole, complete, it is abundant, and lacks nothing. Awakening to this wholeness brings the experience of radical prosperity or sufficiency, and with it, a new way of living. There is enough for all in God's economy. It's time for us to shed the idea that one person's good is another's loss, and to rise to the truth that all can and must prosper. It's a time to free ourselves and our world, our children and our grandchildren, from the specter of scarcity. Many times, students have asked me, if there's no lack in God, why do we see it in our world? We see it because we have collectively believed in it. We have structured our lives and our world by that belief. The lack we perceive in our world is not a problem with the source. It is a spiritual development problem. Humanity is right now like a toddler with a power tool or a computer. The power is there, the potential is there, but we don't yet fully understand and know how to put it to good use. We are awakening to our potential to create a prospering world that works for everyone. Evolving from an egocentric model of life to a spiritually based one. I just think this group would agree. I sort of suspect that about you. As long as we remain in the egocentric system and are unaware of wholeness, there will be lack, fear, and scarcity arising from the collective consciousness. That unawakened consciousness cannot see that we are connected to one another, to the earth, and to nature, and to God. Humanity has lived for centuries with a consciousness of scarcity, the limited thinking that has fomented fear, greed, sexism, racism, xenophobia, militarism, war, and injustice of every kind. It's time for this to change, and we are ready. Thank you. So I hope somebody will ask me about, well, what is the jewel of abundance? Thank you. Well, we are the jewel of abundance. And I'll give you what do they call it? The spoiler of the book. That the goal of wealth, according to the spiritual teaching, is that we become wealth ourselves. That we become a prospering presence in the world so that life is able to give to itself through each one of us. So we are that jewel. But the title of the book comes from prosperity principle that we find in one of the scriptures of yoga, which is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And it gives there the key to wealth, which is so interesting. And it's stated this way. It says, one who is established in non-stealing experiences the jewel of abundance. That person who is established in non-stealing experiences the jewel of abundance. So that's where the title of the book comes from. And then we think, well, what does that mean, right? So this philosophy looks at these teachings, from the physical, material level to the subtle planes, inner planes, as we understand it. So most of us understand what stealing is, right? We stopped our shoplifting when we were kids. Come on now. Everybody tries something like that one time, right? But this is, of course, it's about don't take what does not belong to you. But this is a very profound teaching. And when we look at the core of it is about don't steal, in a sense, don't lie, don't take from others what is rightfully theirs. At the core of it, it has to do with our thinking, with our mind, because we only take from others when we have a mindset that says, I don't have it, and I need to get it from someone else. So whether that's credit from someone else, whether it's praise, whether it's someone else's work that we copy from the internet and pass on, whether it's someone else's committed partner, whether it's living beyond our means in a way that takes from the earth resources that should be shared. This is such a deep teaching, but I will just sum it up by saying it has to do with removing the idea of insufficiency from our own consciousness. So we learn how to experience and to know our own fullness so that we can come from that and attract to us what we need rather than having to take from anyone else. All right, other questions? Yes, please.
Well, I want to see if I can make this concise. I've been very blessed. I've had a major spiritual experience when I was in high school, and that changed my life. And I became a therapist, which brought together my mind and my heart. And I used both in my work, which was very fulfilling. I loved it. And of course, by doing that, I became prosperous because people paid for that. But this connection between mind and heart, I guess I understand that the mind is for the spiritual, for the material world to figure stuff out, and the heart is the function of the spirit. But now, at this point, it seems to me that my mind won't shut up. I mean, I love the spiritual, but my mind is always deciding, well, what am I going to do next, and how much do I have to get done today, and when am I going to do that? And I can't turn it off. So I'm wondering if where that problem comes from, and how does it function in this setup that you have?
Thank you so much for that question. And that, too, is a universal experience. Do the rest of you have an active mind? So I actually spend 2 chapters in my book on this very topic because in order to experience our own wholeness, our own fullness, we need to get deeper than the changing mind. And so in the yoga system, that is really what meditation is all about. That's what that skill is about. And it's also about the philosophy of learning, of course, as you would know from your work, that we are not the mind. You know, we observe the mind, and sometimes the mind can drive us crazy and be a complete distraction as we're watching it change all the time. But it is possible to experience that calm, that wholeness, that stillness within us through the practice of meditation, through learning how to do that. And in particular, the simple way of learning how the mind, the movement of the mind and breath are connected. So very simply, when we learn to meditate, by tuning into our breath, just watching the breath, and by watching it, I mean being aware, feeling the breath, feeling the air as it comes into your nostrils, feeling the air as it moves out again. The mind will naturally calm when we become conscious of the breath. And then the breath will slow, and the mind will slow down, and we'll have some moments of inner peace. So that's what I do. And every day is the answer to how often do we need to do that. Every day. Thank you for that question.
I have it. Hi. It sounds like when you're wanting to limit the consciousness of scarcity, that you might be creating a revolution, which probably you want to do. But just think in our own country, such a division, that the perceived people that have the abundance and those that do not, and one is the enemy, and one is the victim, and it eliminates all that, which is fabulous. But I don't know how we get there.
Thank you so much. And you're right, I am a revolutionary. And I like to think of myself as a spiritual revolutionary. And that this revolution that I'd like to see come about in our country and in the world, I would call a revolution of dharmic prosperity. Because, as you say, we have prosperity and we have want. For the most part, I think it is because an understanding of Dharma, of wholeness, of higher purpose in life is often missing. And so this formula, this very simple formula, but these 4 things, remember that wealth comes after higher purpose. And so, we can say, well, we could have a problem because people are going to have a different opinion about what higher purpose is, right? And what their purpose is. But I think the litmus test is, does it contribute to the well-being of all? That would be dharmic. Yes.
On meditation, technology has stepped in. There are all these apps on phones and computers to help you meditate. Do you think they're as deep as just sitting and being quiet within yourself?
No. But I think they can be a help as long as they don't become a crutch. So maybe it will help someone in the beginning. And interesting enough, in the book, I have a little segment of the book called There's an App for That. And it's about what I call the consciousness app that we all have. And it's already downloaded. And it is our own conscious awareness that will, throughout the day, it will call us to moments of peace, call us to moments of remembrance. And as we begin to notice our own consciousness app, it becomes stronger. So the more you use it, the better it gets. So we already have the app. It's just a matter of learning that we do and how to tune into it. And I was going to say, Mary, did you have part 2 of your question?
Actually, I did. It may be not what you're thinking, but the people that are in survival.
Yes.
I think it is so hard for anyone in that stage. They can't, how can they be esoteric about this? This is still very, we can get this. And it's on that pyramid, Maslow's pyramid. We have the ability to do this thinking and to do this consciously, but when you are trying to survive and you need help and you can easily become the victim of whatever circumstance, I just think it's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and you're right that many of the tools are difficult to access if you're trying to figure out where your next meal is or how to feed your children. But we have enough people with enough resources to get the world back into balance, and that's the critical issue here. Yeah, if we just spread it around a little bit, right?
Thank you so much for this morning. It's just beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, do you ever, at your evolved spiritual state that is your life, do you ever feel yourself being swept into chaos? And if so, because to me the world has so much chaos out there, and no matter how connected we are, sometimes I really feel swept into it. And what do you do personally to avoid chaos?
Thank you so much. It's true that there's a lot of chaos in the world. And in the practice of yoga, I'll just say this very simply. We understand that self-care, let's call it capital S, self-care, is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So if I find myself getting off balance, it's because I haven't tended to self-care in the best way. So for me, having a regular practice, we're talking about meditating every day, having a healthy diet, limiting the amount of time I would watch the news or even what I would watch on the news, those kinds of ways of self-care are critical to not losing my balance. So I have a preventative system to begin with, which is not getting too tired, that kind of thing. But of course, right now, I'm traveling a lot, and so there's that tendency. So I kind of have a list of things that I know will help bring me back into balance. In the path of Kriya Yoga, the first teaching of what constitutes Kriya Yoga is self-discipline. It is learning how to live a disciplined life. Second practice is study. So every day, reading something inspirational and also studying yourself, paying attention. And the third principle is surrender. It's like letting go of the idea that you can control everything, and then fundamentally letting go of the idea that you're separate from God, separate from the source. So those are my prescriptions. Those top 3, self-discipline, self-study and self-surrender. Yes. My pleasure.